Happy Women's History Month. March is a time for us to celebrate the accomplishments, perseverance, and fortitude of the women who have shaped Pennsylvania and our world into what it is today.
This year's theme is promoting hope and providing healing, and it serves as a reminder that the women of Pennsylvania have been valiant in their efforts to lift up our Commonwealth.
It is also an opportunity to recognize those women who are making history today, those who've guided us through a public health crisis, helped us reach milestones in protecting women's health, fought for our voters and democracy in one of the most controversial elections to date, and so much more.
Women have been present at every moment in history, and they have often been left out of the stories that define the essence of Pennsylvania, but not anymore.
So this month, and every month, let's make sure to honor our women by recognizing their immense contributions to our society.
Because, after all, girls do run the world. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to celebrate Women's History Month in Pennsylvania. My name is Moriah Hathaway, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Commission for Women. To give you all some background about the Commission for Women, we consist of about 30 volunteer members who are responsible for advising Governor Wolf on policies and legislation that impact women in our state. We support economic and civic opportunities for women. We encourage mentoring programs for girls and young women and identify opportunities for the benefit and advancement of women. Most importantly, we serve as a resource center for Pennsylvania's women, which is why it's my pleasure to moderate today's event. This year's theme for Women's History Month is providing healing and promoting hope, which seems fitting as we continue to live through a global pandemic. And I would like to take a moment to just thank all of the women who've been on the front lines providing healing and promoting hope for over the last 2 years. To honor this month's theme, I had the honor of sitting down to have a conversation with women in Pennsylvania who provide healing and promote hope in their communities every single day. Today, you'll hear from Winden Rowe, Dr. Aasta Mehta, and Reverend Yvette Davis. Winden Rowe is the director of the Center for Change at Kennett Square, where she works with individuals, couples, families, and organizations. Aasta Mehta, MD, is the medical officer of Women's Health for the Philadelphia Department of Public Health and an OBGYN clinical faculty at Pennsylvania Hospital. Reverend Yvette Davis is the director of the Papel Shaw Center for Race and Ethnicity at Dickinson College. I'm so grateful to be having this discussion with these women and hearing about their personal experiences, and I hope that you all enjoy today's discussion. To start today's discussion, I would just like to give you all an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Moriah. My name is Aasta Mehta. I am an OBGYN. I work clinically at Pennsylvania Hospital in Philadelphia, which is part of Penn Medicine. But my full-time job is I'm the medical officer for Women's Health at the Philadelphia Department of Public Health within the Division of Maternal, Child, and Family Health. In that role, I lead a lot of the maternal health work that we do in the city, which includes our maternal mortality review team and our community action team. And I do a lot of programmatic implementation to reduce maternal mortality, particularly racial disparities in the city. In addition to that, I do a lot of work with the state, coordinate with the state on maternal mortality and our perinatal quality care collaborative.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's an honor to be invited. My name is Winden Rowe, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have and direct a group private practice in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. I'm a trauma therapist, so my area of focus and treatment is treating anything trauma related, anything related to chronic stress. And in addition to that, when I'm not being a therapist, I do public speaking and writing on trauma, on the healing process. I I am a member of what's called HEAL PA, which is an organization that Governor Wolf kicked off. It's all a blur. It was 2020, where we started with a think tank, and then that turned into a whole huge organization of volunteers from around the state trying to initiate and implement what's called trauma-informed policy in all areas of public health and service. And in addition to that, I'm a mom and a woman living in Pennsylvania, so it's definitely relevant, this topic today.
Well, thank you so much, Moriah. I am very honored by this invitation to share. So I'm Reverend Yvette Davis, and I live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I am ordained in the Baptist Church and connected with the beloved Community Baptist Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have been in ministry for about 15 years now, between the Methodist Church and the Baptist Church. I have been and continue to be a librarian, because once a librarian, always a librarian. I also have a background in faith-rooted, community-based organizing. And I am currently the director of the Popal Shaw Center for Race and Ethnicity at Dickinson College.
Now I'd just like to ask you, on a personal level, what does it mean to provide healing and promote hope?
I think providing healing can be different things based on what we're actually thinking about healing. Healing to me is a holistic process. It can address mental health, physical needs, emotional and spiritual needs, and oftentimes it's connected to culture, your family, and your community. In terms of hope and how to promote hope, I think that hope really inspires the healing process. You have to have hope in order to overcome a lot, or one can think about hope as overcoming things in order to make your life better in some way. And that, I think, goes and can translate to sort of community hope as well, in terms of, having a will to like make things better in your community and also on an individual level. So it can also help you in tough situations and make them more bearable, so that you can eventually move forward and have a happy and healthy, healed life, so to speak.
Such an interesting question, because I think there are two prongs to how people want to approach the recovery process on a micro and macro level. From the trauma perspective, we talk about the most important foundation to implement in order to get through the healing process is safety and stabilization. So on a macro level, I think we're struggling with that right now. There's a lot of instability in this world. And so it's hard to really think in terms of healing right now when we globally can't seem to figure out how to get to a balancing point. But in terms of healing, once we're able to do that, whether that's on an individual basis or a larger basis, I use this analogy from a training that I was in earlier. Well, actually, it was last year now, where a teacher in a trauma conference was talking about when a dog bites your hand, in order to get the dog to release your hand from its grip, what you do is you push the hand a little deeper into the mouth, and then that's where the release is. And in healing work, that's how that works, right? There's this phrase that we hear being thrown around a lot right now called toxic positivity, which means, this idea of putting this kind of like whitewash Band-Aid over everything, like, oh, everything is okay, it's going to be good, think a happy thought, which there's a lot of merit to that. Obviously, we don't want to walk around being super negative all the time, but I think we really need to have leadership and a voice that's going to really truly address the gravity of what we have experienced in the last couple of years and generationally and I don't see that really being done. I think there are grassroots organizations that are doing that, and I think the more that we work together, that we can facilitate that, and hopefully someday, in the hopefully near future, at the government level, we'll figure out how to get back to the place where we respectfully spoke across the aisle to one another. But I think until that happens, we talk about trickle down as this really kind of negative connotation in terms of trickle down economics, depending on your perspectives and perceptions around that. But I think there is sort of like a trickle down energy that is lacking in leadership right now. And I'm hoping that that changes. And I think a lot of that power can exist in women if we learn to claim and own our power, and also figure out how to work together, which I think is a big, there's a disruption there still.
Well, healing is very central to my faith. I subscribe to a Christian tradition. So when I look at the life and the resurrection and the life after life of Jesus Christ, I cannot separate healing from my belief in him, and I can't separate healing from my calling, both as a minister and as someone who self-identifies as a Christ follower. So I strongly believe in healing physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. No matter what any individual has been through, and I personally have been through a lot, I can testify that healing is possible. There is always hope as long as we have breath in our bodies, and everyone has a purpose. So in the midst of discovering that purpose, we can also experience healing. And really all we need to believe is that it's possible, and we need to submit to the work that is required, which is faith and self-reflection and being open to healing processes, depending on where you need that healing.
And how have you provided healing to your community?
As a physician, on an individual level, I think about healing as healing a physical ailment. But I think in order to really do my job well, it does go beyond just sort of curing the physical thing that's causing whatever pain or morbidity or something like that, and really recognizing that in the process of curing the physical ailment, there might be unintentional consequences of that, and people might have to heal from even that process of curing the physical thing. I think about sort of, I work in labor and delivery, and I think about sort of, the journey people go through to have a baby, and oftentimes that journey can be happy, but oftentimes it can be, there can be things that happen during that journey that can have unintended consequences. And so recognizing that those unintended consequences, maybe it's a traumatic birth. So at the end of the day, the baby's fine and the mom is fine physically, but the trauma that someone incurred during that process could certainly stay with them and affect them, for a period afterwards. And so recognizing that, acknowledging that, and really supporting people in those individual types of encounters, I think is really important. In terms of community healing and sort of thinking about it more broadly as from a population level, really kind of, I think the most important thing is to first recognize what it is that needs to be healed, and then working and partnering with the community in order to find solutions, identify where there are issues, and really work together in order to promote that healing. And I think the first step is just to acknowledge that there is something that needs to be fixed, and then who are you having around the table, and the community should be front and center in helping along with that healing process. And so when we think about women and women's health, really listening to women and what they feel and their experiences is like the most important thing when we're trying to find solutions to inspire healing.
In my work in my community, I obviously do a lot of, individual work. So I'm working with individuals, couples, and families. I'm very, as I get older, more systems conscious. So I really, really, really in the last couple of years have started to hone in on just how much the systems that we have are re-traumatizing for people. Criminal justice system of medicine, even to our own providers, provider health, provider mental health right now is at an all-time low. So is the very case with the clinical process, getting licensed and going through school and counselor education. There are massive gaps in terms of these systems not being trauma-informed. Education. So in my own community, I do a lot of work with families and individuals to help them understand, I say this all the time, before you go judging yourself, diagnosing yourself, evaluating yourself, take a look at your surroundings, take a look at your environment, take a look at the container that you're in. So is it you, or is it how you're learning to manage something that isn't trauma-informed, meaning it's not promoting and perpetuating your own health? And there are massive gaps of that even in my own field. I love working in mental health, but it's a very poorly constructed system right now. Not necessarily popular opinion, but I'm here to facilitate change. I do a lot of writing, I'm very prolific in my writing, and I told you this earlier, I joke around that I'll talk to a shoebox about trauma if it's going to help. So I'm just kind of a mouthpiece, and I don't think that that's going to change. And I think the more that we have these dialogues, like moving the hand deeper into the mouth, and we look at the stuff that doesn't work, but we look at it from an angle of hope and healing and change, it's very impactful and very powerful. I'm a trauma therapist. I work with the absolute worst things that you could imagine. I work with homicide, I work with suicide, I work with addiction, I work with overdose, I work with sexual abuse, any and all of it. And people ask me all the time, how do you do your job? And I do my job because I see that trauma heals, and I see that we can change, and that if we learn how to access resilience and we teach people how to access resilience, that we could be so much better than we are right now. We really could. It doesn't have to be this way. And in terms of being a mom, I love my children. I will say, I think I'm enjoying motherhood more now than I ever have. I was a single parent, so it was extremely difficult. I think I'm like managing a little PTSD from that right now, genuinely. Like I'm kind of coming out of this massive fog. But so I have adult children. They're 18 and 20, and it's so awesome to have this role professionally in my life and bring some of this home to them. And I'm hoping that we can do that globally at some point. It's really not that complicated, and it doesn't have to be.
That is a great question, because there have been times when it was intentional and times when I was not aware that I was ministering healing. And healing comes through a number of different forms. One, of course, is prayer. There are folks who ask me to pray with them around particular situations. And sometimes it is a situation or circumstance that needs transformation through healing. And then there are times when folks are dealing with depression, low self-esteem, they're just feeling very down on themselves. So I will often pray with folks in that way. But I think most often, deep listening is really critical. And Deep listening, I believe, is a step beyond what we consider to be active listening. Not only being present and focused and acknowledging what a person is saying and reflecting back to them, but also finding those areas where we can sincerely and authentically empathize and internalize what it is that we're hearing, so that in my case, so that I can actually guide folks towards their own healing resources. You know, it's the combination of the human and the divine. And very often, because we're so overcome by whatever it is that's afflicting us, that we don't realize that we already have internal resources that we can tap into, so that we can also take ownership of our own healing process, while also delving into our faith, and not necessarily Christianity, but I have ministered with folks of various faiths. So that is one way, and there have been times when I have been delivering healing and did not know it, simply because someone decided to take a chance and share something with me. And what I thought was a conversation was really an opportunity for two of us to process something together. Sometimes that ended in prayer, and other times it just ended in the liberation of the other person. And me feeling honored and blessed that they would invite me into their process.
And how have you promoted hope in your community?
Well, I hope that just by leading by example in all the work that I do, I try very hard to partner with the community on any sort of big decisions, or when we're thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to fix this issue? Really elevating that community voice is important. I also think data is important, and being armed with the same information. So if some group is working with one set of data, but the community doesn't have access to that or understand that data because it's confusing and whatever, then you're already working from two different sort of set points. And so really translating data into something that can be understood by all and that can be digested by all. So that way you're sort of starting off with the same set of knowledge, and then really advocating either alongside the community or for the community, on different issues is something that I try to do regularly, but recognizing that I never want to speak for that community, so I'd rather advocate alongside than for, or at least understand the issues as best I can before doing that. So I would say advocacy and data are like big things that I do on a community level, and partnering with the community on solutions to really inspire hope. I think that once you have any individual, once they know a little bit more about what the problems are going to be much more well equipped to speak for themselves and speak for their communities. And I think the message that is made from the community is so much more powerful than something that is a message that from an outsider. And so really arming the community with what they need in order to advocate for themselves and really speak for themselves is something that I inspire to do.
I have a lot of experience with 12-step programs in my own personal life and in my public professional life. And despite having lots of experience with addiction and people close to me in recovery, I just heard for the first time the acronym for HOPE, hearing other people's experiences. Had you heard that before?
I have not heard that, I don't think.
I hadn't either. And I thought, how powerful. Hearing other people's experiences. So what does that mean? That means that we create hope and we find hope by way of authenticity, right? So I share my story, you share your story. I have a professional colleague who has said that, I think it was Steve Jobs said, the most powerful person in the community is the storyteller, right? It's where we experience connection and shared experience. And I'm also a massive Star Wars fan by way of being a single mom of 2 boys, where that's just a big bonding point for us. And I think it was Rogue One. I always botch a little bit. Sometimes I have to go back and look it up. But the line in the movie is, rebellions are built on hope, right? So we change not through negativity, we change through connection and shared experience and coming together. War is a divisive experience. It divides us, right? Hope is a healing experience, and it brings us together. And the reality is, and this is why I love trauma, is once you step into the trauma space, none of the stuff that separates us matters anymore, right? It's all stuff that's below the tissue. And, hopefully, like I keep saying, I think there is a change coming. You mentioned younger kids, generations. They're really interesting. They're an empowered group of people that aren't afraid to ask, so why do you guys do it this way? This doesn't make any sense. And it's really cool to see an empowered generation starting to shift the dialogue. I'll also say that doesn't exclude the power that exists in our older folks, right? I have people walk into counseling at 75. It's the first time they've stepped into a therapist's office. 80 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And they too understand the power of change and healing. And so again, yeah, age can be an indicator, but it's not universal that the younger generations hold the wisdom and the power. We have that across all populations.
I, as one, and clearly as a woman in mainline denominations, a woman clergy person in mainline denominations, as a Black woman in denominations and living in the United States, I can sincerely testify and share with folks that there is always hope. I have experienced a tremendous amount of emotional pain throughout my life. And it is because I have been able to heal, and because I have invited God to process with me so that He could heal me, and I have an involvement in that, I can say that there is joy at the end of the pain. And honestly, it doesn't matter what it is that we've gone through. There is always another day. And one metaphor that I love to use is that our books are not finished yet. The pages are still open. The pen is still moving. So it is a wonderful thing for us to understand that healing is possible. There is hope. And I always love to invite folks to envision what their life after the healing looks like. For them to envision what they would love their lives to look like, because it is possible. So I'm very strong on encouragement. I'm very strong on sharing hope. And, when we think about birth, the act of giving birth, that is impossible. When you really think about what occurs in a woman's body and for the baby, that is absolutely impossible. And we do it. And there are so many things, and, there are so many things that we experience in life that just seem to be impossible, but we do them anyway. And then there are those things where even if we are not able to do certain things, because I do also understand I was one who was not able to have a child. I had several miscarriages, in an earlier life. But the joy that I experience with the young people that I have been encountering, for a number of years brings me such tremendous joy. So there's always something to bring us joy, to bring us peace, and to bring us the happiness that we long for.
To end today's discussion, I would like to hear what we can do better in Pennsylvania to promote hope and provide healing to women.
Well, I think, establishing the review process is step one in at least the hope part of, being able to present data to the communities that are most impacted. And then, I think it's important to think about how you're presenting the data, and ensure that it's in a way that people will understand what the issues are, and partnering with them to even look at the data. So having people with lived experience on the review committee and, really looking at the data and helping be part of the solutions, is something that I think that everybody can always do a better job about. And, that's something that I think that the state could also sort of think about, in terms of providing hope, is really, ensuring that you have the right people around the table, including community members. In terms of advocacy, certainly there's policy solutions that can positively impact all communities and all women, and certainly those that are marginalized. So really thinking about the systems that have been sort of erected over the past decades, and ensuring that they're now sort of retooled to promote equity, to really ensure that you're having all communities represented. Those would be, I think, like things that could happen at a state level that could really inspire broader hope and change, in different communities. And also partnering with communities, right? So there's, the state, while it has as a larger task of thinking about sort of the whole geographical area, but really, if they're noticing that there are certain communities that are more impacted than others in certain areas, really looking to those local solutions, to really improve people's lives in those places.
So when I think of women, the first thing that I always think is we make the people, right? We make the people. And so when you have a system of government, then you have systems of health and systems of public health. And this gets really dicey really quickly in this political space right now. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a capitalist. I think I'm a little bit of both, right? I work for myself. I appreciate the free market. And at the same time, can't we just all have healthcare? So I think that we can be bipartisan and figure out how to work across the aisle. Like if we can send rockets into outer space, can't we figure out how to take care of people? It seems like that can coexist. To have a society that doesn't invest sustainably in its people, and in specifically women and children, and women who are making the people, that's a very powerful red flag to me, right? If we looked at animal populations and saw that the female counterpart in the species were not being protected or fed or cared for, and the children, so to speak, the baby animals were not, we would think that's very strange, right? We would scientifically investigate, why is that happening? But for some reason, we have created a culture of survival, right? Like this figure it out culture. And nobody wins from that. And nobody wins economically from that. So out of the College of Population Health at Jefferson, we have a couple of really extraordinary leaders there. And one of the big points of data that's come out from them in the last few years is that in the United States, we spend post-diagnostically, right? So we start investing in care once people are sick or hungry or in danger or unwell, and that we don't invest in wellness. Only 5% of our healthcare dollars go to wellness.
Mhm.
So the analogy that I use a lot is that is the equivalent of building mops versus figuring out where in the plumbing the break is. And so to not have adequate systems of care and support and education for women and children is, I mean, sometimes I'm like, am I in some kind of really strange simulation? Like, this is just, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm hoping that we start to do some kind of, and I think we're doing that with Heal PA, we're attempting to, but some kind of reinvigoration around community and compassion in our social construct. And I think one of the best places to start with that is with women, and really changing that paradigm.
I think something that would be extremely helpful that we don't do enough of is have sister circles where women are coming together, whether they're part of a faith tradition or not, to celebrate each other, to encourage each other, to process pain and joy with each other, because we are dealing with so much. We have misogyny and patriarchy, white supremacy, especially if you're a woman of color. But we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And we have to remind ourselves all the time, but it's also wonderful to hear it come from another voice. And when we know, when there are other women who are speaking life over us, who are telling us, no, honey, you are not defective and you're not crazy. You are fabulous from head to toe, from left to right. And that is something that I think that women do not do enough of. And I'm originally from New York. I was born and raised on Long Island, and I moved to Pennsylvania from Brooklyn. And we didn't do it enough there, but there's a little difference in the culture in New York because women, at least in my day, tended to be a lot more career-oriented. And Pennsylvania has a wonderful culture of career orientation and family orientation. So we have the combination of challenges. And as women, we have a tendency to carry everything on our shoulders. So we have to come together and recognize, honey, you don't have to carry everything. You can set boundaries. But until you learn how to set boundaries and find out where those places are, I am here to support you and give you as much as I can that you need. So we need more opportunities for women to just love on each other, to speak wonderful things over each other and tell each other how beautiful we are, inside and out, and to tell each other how awesome we are because we do the impossible every day. And we do it well. Even when we think we don't do it well, we are doing it well. And even when it does not appear to be enough, it is enough. And then we have another opportunity with another day, as God blesses us with life, to do it again, to do it better, or to not do it at all until the next day. So I think that those are the things that women from Pennsylvania can do to better support each other and really encourage each other to not think that we're not doing it enough, not doing it well enough, because we beat each other up, beat ourselves up. We beat ourselves up all the time. And it is neither necessary nor is it productive. And part of our healing is both to learn how to encourage ourselves and have a passion to encourage each other.
Thank you so much again to our amazing panelists for sharing some time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today and to share your experiences with all of us. And now we will continue today's celebration with entertainment from the Carraig School of Irish Dance.
I'm Christina Scholl, and I started the Carraig School of Irish Dance 10 years ago. Irish dance was born out of hope and resilience. Legend tells us that this style of dancing with the arms at your side was developed so the Irish people could lift their spirits by dancing in their homes. They did this to avoid the English invaders that were patrolling the streets, looking in windows, ensuring that nobody was having too much fun. In our dance studio, it seems that our extended dance family has suffered more than our fair share of traumas over the years. But dance has been a constant, here to help us heal and boost our spirits. The girls are now going to show you some dancing. This dance is a slip jig. This dance traditionally is more light and airy and performed by our female dancers. This dance the girls are going to do is entitled St. Patrick's Day. This dance was choreographed over hundreds of years ago and is a dedication to St. Patrick and the holiday.
Thank you so much to the Carraig School of Irish Dance for sharing that performance with us. It was truly wonderful. And I wanted to thank you all again for joining us for today's event. We're going to close today's program with a presentation that highlights women from all over the state as they share with us their thoughts on this year's theme of providing healing and promoting hope. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of Women's History Month.